Winter, 1943. Somewhere near Pskov. Snow falls on the barrack roof. Inside, there's warmth from the stove, but a different kind of cold seeps through the walls. A cold that cannot be warmed. 23 women. The youngest is 16. The oldest, 41. Each one had a life, a name, dreams, family. Now they have only numbers in a sanitary log. Imagine this. On the front line, amid howling blizzards and the thunder of artillery, there existed buildings that would never be mentioned in history textbooks. Small houses, converted apartments, barracks behind field hospitals. Soldiers entered for 20 minutes. Women remained for months, sometimes forever. These places were called controlled rest houses of the Wehrmacht, but there was no rest. This was a machine of destruction, only slow, quiet, invisible. For decades, everyone remained silent. In Germany, because the truth burned. In the Soviet Union, because these women were considered traitors. No monuments were erected for them. They were not recognized as victims. They were simply erased from history. But today, the archives are open, and the dead no longer stay silent. Chapter 1. How Hell is Created. France, 1940. After victory in the French campaign, German military doctors faced a problem. Soldiers were being infected with venereal diseases en masse. The army was losing combat effectiveness, not from bullets, but from syphilis and gonorrhea. The SS found a solution. Create a system. A network of brothels under strict medical supervision. In the West, this could still be called work. Some women went there voluntarily, for money, food, documents. But the system required expansion. And in the West, there weren't enough women. June 22nd, 1941. Everything changes. When Wehrmacht tanks crossed the Soviet border, the last thing connecting this system to humanity vanished. The illusion of choice. In the East, no one was asked. They were taken, right off the streets, from homes, during raids, from lists compiled by local police collaborators, after document checks, in camps for prisoners of war and civilians. German documents contain no names, only lines. Suitable, 19 years old, healthy. Able to work, 22 years old, no children. Temporarily assigned to unit. A woman became a resource, like gasoline, like ammunition. Her name was Anna. She was 21 years old. She lived in a village near Smolensk, worked as a teacher. When the Germans came, she hid in the cellar. They found her 2 days later. 3 days in a filtration camp. Doctor's examination. Stamp in her file. Fit for use. They brought her to a barrack near divisional headquarters. 8 women were already there, all silent. One was crying, quietly, so the guards wouldn't hear. On the first day, 10 soldiers visited her. On the second, 12. By the third, she stopped counting. After a month, she stopped crying. After 2, she stopped feeling. Numbers colder than graves. Wehrmacht sanitary logs have been preserved. In them, dry lines, behind which lie millions of shattered lives. 10 to 12 soldiers per day, standard load. In certain units, up to 30 visits. Weekly medical examination, mandatory. Upon detection of disease, isolation. Isolation, a beautiful word. In practice, transfer to a concentration camp or execution. Freezing barracks in winter. Sheds scorching in summer. No water. Lice, disease, hunger. But worst of all, the absence of a future. Every morning, the same. Every day, another step toward death. Only slow, drawn out, measured not in bullets, but in days. Chapter 3. Medicine as a Weapon. Dr. Kurt Mueller, a medical officer in the 16th Army, performed weekly examinations of women in what were called controlled houses. He neither beat nor shouted. His method was chillingly simple. He merely wrote "fit" or "isolate" in his log. One word, scribbled on a page, decided a woman's fate. Doctors, sworn to heal, were transformed into executioners in white coats. Medical ethics dissolved, replaced by brutal military logic. Women were reduced to mere material, to be checked for suitability. Falling ill could lead to a camp. Pregnancy resulted in forced abortion or execution, and any refusal was met with torture. Yet, amidst this darkness, there were other doctors. Heroes who risked everything, falsifying diagnoses, secretly passing medicine, defying the system, to save even a single life. Military doctor Erich Sommer exemplified this resistance. He once recorded "all healthy" in his log, fully aware that 2 women exhibited clear symptoms of gonorrhea. He knew that an honest diagnosis meant their certain death. A week later, Sommer was transferred to the brutal Eastern Front. He died at Stalingrad. Was it coincidence, or was it the price of compassion? Even in hell, a choice remains. Small, almost invisible, but it exists. Escape near Pskov, winter 1943. 7 women saved breadcrumbs for 2 months, waited for the guard to get drunk. One night, he fell asleep. They broke the window, wrapped their hands in rags, climbed out. 3 froze in the forest. 4 reached the partisans. One of them, Maria Savalyeva, later fought, blew up trains, became a hero of the Soviet Union. But she received the medal for blowing up a train, not for escaping the brothel. She kept silent about that until her death. Mutiny in Poland, summer 1944. Women locked themselves inside the barracks, barricaded the door, shouted, "We won't come out." They were broken out after 2 days. Half were shot on the spot. The rest were sent to Auschwitz. But for those 2 days, they were free. Others resisted differently, passed notes to partisans, memorized vehicle numbers, sabotaged, broke locks, hid soldiers' belongings, poisoned themselves to get sick and be removed from rotation. They couldn't change the outcome of the war. But they could preserve human dignity, the last thing they had left. The war ended. Germany lay in ruins. The country sought a way to move forward and chose oblivion. No one wanted to remember. Too many people knew. Too many participated. Doctors, officers, soldiers, they all returned home, became peaceful citizens, opened clinics, shops, schools. And the women? No one spoke of them, because their story was a mirror that Germans didn't want to look into. But even in the USSR, where these women should have been recognized as victims, they were met with contempt. You were under occupation? What did you do there? You were interrogated? Tell us everything. The Germans didn't touch you? Strange. They weren't called victims. They were called suspicious, sometimes traitors. Maria K., liberated by the Red Army in 1944, went through 3 months of NKVD interrogation. Then she was sent to exile in Siberia. She survived a German brothel, only to freeze for 10 years in Soviet exile. She never told her story again, not even to her children. Most stayed silent until death, out of fear, out of shame, out of the impossibility of explaining. How do you explain to children, grandchildren? Grandma, what did you do in the war? Nothing, sweetheart. I just survived. And they carried the truth to their graves. Chapter 6. Archives do not lie. For decades, the truth was hidden. But only in the 1990s did archives across the globe finally begin to open. From Germany to Israel, the United States, Poland, Belarus, and Ukraine, a fragmented story began to assemble itself from thousands of unearthed documents. In Germany's Bundesarchiv, vital records like sanitary logs, military orders, and detailed lists painted a grim picture. The Nuremberg trials provided harrowing testimonies and revealing facility diagrams, exposing the mechanisms of atrocity. At the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum, the voices of survivors echoed through their poignant interviews. Yad Vashem in Israel preserved intimate diaries and heartfelt letters from women in occupied territories, giving personal insight into their daily struggles. And in the archives of Belarus and Ukraine, chilling interrogation protocols and extensive filtration lists unveiled the systematic control and persecution. Each document, each piece of paper, is a voice that remains silent for decades, finally allowed to speak. Each line written, each name recorded, represents a life they tried to erase. But through these archives, their memory endures. The history of Wehrmacht field brothels is not a story about an army. It is a story about people deprived of choice. About women who were stolen from the streets. About those who tried to flee and froze in the forest. About those who rebelled and were shot. About those who survived and kept silent all their lives. War took from them more than their lives. It took their voices. The years of silence are not simply forgetting. They are part of their suffering. To tell this story is to return to them the right to truth. War is not only battles and medals. It is the fates of those who were silenced for far too long.